Thanks for having me, Mike. Excited to be here. Oh, thanks. Yeah. So, Beacon is named after the bee.
Okay, tell us
Bees
about that.
survived and thrive through collaboration, and real estate property usually does not collaborate enough. So, we
Ooh.
are trying to create a kinship of investors bound by data. And my team and I are on a mission to plant a beacon in every property in the world. Oh, absolutely. So, we are an analytics platform. And what that means is we synthesize, normalize lots and lots of data about rents, rental properties, neighborhoods. And what we sell to investors and lenders are software solutions that help them across the asset lifecycle. What that simplistically means is we use AI and big data to help them buy, manage, and in future finance their property portfolios using our platform. Absolutely, absolutely. So, and real estate is naturally set up for it if you think about it, right? Because there's like pools of data, like property management data. When you manage properties, you know how messy and you know poor it can be sometimes, or small. Like if you own 1,000 units, you have data on 1,000 properties. Can't really do any machine learning with that. So there's small pools of data, and you have large pools of data about neighborhoods, migration, payment patterns of people that credit card companies have. uh, and if you can marry these two data sets and bring them together, you can do what is called transfer learning. You can transfer an understanding of things or people to smaller data sets. That's the power of machine learning, which I think is uniquely applied to real estate.
Is that the right way to
Absolutely.
unpack?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the second order is you train your models on large pools of data. So your models are fairly accurate. There's an
Mhm.
understanding of relationships. And then you apply it to a data set that the model has never seen before. And that data set might be missing 9 out of the 15 variables because you never captured them. But because the model is so accurate, it will be able to tell you fairly accurately what the answer should be.
I want to be. Is that
Yeah,
right?
so the warehouse will just a kind of coagulation of the structured data. You kind of build it, create tables, columns, right? You can query them. It's all clean, right? Uh, and so I guess that's sort of the data lake, right?
Yep.
But I guess the the other part of it is the modeling, right? So you take these. So for example, in a typical multifamily property, you would have about 175 columns worth of data
Yeah.
that you could conceivably create for every resident, right? And
Yes.
that's not including all the payment patterns. So if each monthly payment was a column in itself, there's at least 12 columns, right? So,
Right.
so you suddenly have 175 columns, right? For each of the 300 residents or more who live in your community, right? You give it to a poor property manager and be like, go play. Like, tell me, like, what's the answer? Uh, which one of these 300 is going to renew their lease? And they're like, oh wow, right? That's a curveball. So, but then you marry it to our model, which is trained on 50 million kind of listings and about 50 variables for each property and each resident, and it just tells you like this is what I know about people in this neighborhood renewing and people with these kind of attributes that your property seems to have. Uh, and so that's kind of the model is finding relationship, right? And I'll give you an example if that might make it easier.
Yeah.
On any day in a property, you make a decision about anything, right? Is this a good resident or is it not, right? Is this a high rent or is this not, right? In each of these decisions, your brain is going through some sort of a tree where you start with good community, yes, no, good area, yes, no, decent traffic, yes, no, right? uh,
Right.
lots of work orders, yes, no, right? These are all trees. right?
Yeah.
A machine can take a million trees at runtime of these and just average them out, right? Which a human being just conceivably cannot do, right? And that tree-based approach is what makes machine learning so powerful. So everything you do in your day-to-day, like an experienced property manager can probably run through a lot of these trees quickly. Okay, good asset, bad asset, good resident, blah blah blah. But just sheer computing power that a machine has is so much faster, so much better that if you label these trees and give it to the machine, it'll always make that predictably good answer. So the system will form the relationship, right? So the system goes in very naive. It's like, I know nothing, right?
Yes.
I'm just looking at lots and lots of these decisions because each outcome of a person renewing or not renewing is a decision, it's an outcome, right? By looking at
Right.
these outcomes and looking all the data, you know, pertaining to the outcome, I'll form the relationship, I'll form the weight,
That makes
right?
sense to me.
And that's nimble, it's dynamic. The problem with the rule is it works 7 times out of 10. It's fairly powerful, right? Right?
Right.
But the 3 times it does not work, you don't know why it didn't work,
Ah,
right?
right. Okay.
And those 3 times is what takes everyone's like, it causes brain damage, causes powwow, causes friction, right?
Yeah.
It makes sense. Like, and that's kind
It
of
does.
why models are so much better. Because when it doesn't work, you know why it didn't work,
You can
right?
go find the cell in
Yeah,
Excel, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think models are a lot more dynamic for, and that you can calibrate them again. You can almost tell the model, look, I made these new decisions, now learn again, right? Okay, it's got
Right.
this new bunch of decisions, now go learn because the 3 times you thought I was wrong, right? Let's try and get those three to two or one, right? So, so I think that's the power of machine learning, and which is why, like, stock markets use it, traders use it, right? Several in like autonomous vehicles. Think of an autonomous vehicle's risk. It's got to spot a person, right? It's got to
Right.
turn, right? It may not have seen that person across the street ever, or it may not have seen a dog running across the street, or a kid taking a dog for a walk. Like, it may not have been trained on that, right? It may not have
Right.
those pictures in his database. So yeah, it has to react to that new information based on stuff it's learned in the past, right?
Yep.
And that's kind of where those are similar. It's not as extreme in property management, but it's sort of similar, right? Like on site, you have to deal with new situations which have like similarities to a lot of other situations in the past. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think
It
that's
does.
fundamentally why. Yeah, that's fundamentally why machine learning is winning, right? Like in many instances, it is conceivably the better answer. Yep.
Especially in
Yeah,
the,
yeah. Exactly,
go ahead.
exactly. And there's research, right? Like in all kind of like, I mean, we're a kind of private company, with venture money, but like
Hmm.
venture capitalists have all sorts of biases, right? They'll
Right.
over index in a few things because at that time the outcome is uncertain. Like, you look at a company for investing, you don't know if it'll be 20 billion or like it'll die or something, right? At that point you don't have that understanding, so you're making a decision based on just imperfect information, right?
Right.
And therefore, to your point about bias, you might just over index on something, right? You may like, oh, I really fell in love with that thing, and the last five guys I met who were like that, it turned out to be, rock stars or whatever. So,
Right.
uh, does it make sense? So I think this is just a more objective way of kind of getting a more predictably better outcome.
Of
Yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So if you think about an asset, right? Think about a property. In buying the asset, in managing the asset, and in financing the asset, there is
Hmm.
almost always a data problem. There's a
That is fair.
and and as a result, there's a decision problem, the decision intelligence problem, because you're making sometimes imperfect decisions based on imperfect data.
Yes. Okay.
So as we think about creating tools, we think about that entire kind of life cycle of an asset.
Okay.
where we want to solve problems across all these three stages. So today we have two products or two kind of families of products. So Ebby, our product, is a hyper accurate rental estimate. So think of it as a Zillow rent estimate for any apartment, any single family home, any condo in the country, which is available on demand,
Okay.
right? And it
Yep.
saves you on a good day 5 to 7 hours of hand comping, surveying, cold calling, talk about judgment, cleaning, right? All of that sort of applying your, your knowledge. And it gives you a hyper accurate number in milliseconds, which is just impossible to do manually. Um,
That's right.
and so that's sort of the underwriting side. And what that does, it gives you underwriting velocity, where you can look at lots and lots of deals and only double down on those that pencil, especially in
Mm.
this market. Uh,
Yeah.
and then moving over to the management side, we have a family of about 28 models about people, about assets, about properties, neighborhoods. So one of those models, for example, can accurately predict how likely a resident is to renew their lease. So,
Okay. Interesting.
and that model can be used for prioritizing on-site initiatives.
Hmm.
As you think about, this is a very tough market for operators. Everyone's trying to play defense. Everyone's trying to keep heads in beds, uh, but they don't quite know which resident is going to stay.
Right.
They have an idea, but they don't have hand on heart, they don't know. This model allows them to uniquely focus on folks who might be slippery and kind of engage them, kind of make sure they prioritize initiatives differently. uh, and then the third product marries these different models about neighborhoods, about residents and market to essentially dynamically price leases. So price both renewals and new leases by understanding the market and the resident. So think of it as a fairly autonomous revenue optimization platform, where it
Okay.
doesn't need a human being to sort of tinker with it as much. You can just set goals for the machine, and the machine will sort of work hard to get you those goals. Uh, yeah, and the last one, which I'm passionate about, is a beta product, is a social impact score. So for the first time, we can measure the impact a community creates socially and electronically give that score to a property. And the idea there is that can be used for to unbundle the impact workforce and affordable housing creates, because till now they've been kind of looked at it as a bond, as a financial instrument. The only way to sort of measure the return is what is the yield, and there's like a soft sort of overlay about like it creates affordability, therefore there's impact. But our score empirically creates a social impact score uh, for the property or a portfolio.
What did that?
Exactly, Bob. We like him a lot. Exactly. So we are one of the standards we adopt is the MIC, the framework.
That's what it is.
So it's yeah, absolutely. So it and it's their framework implicitly also maps to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So it's sort of what is considered impact right across the globe.
Hmm.
But our job is it maps to those metrics, but it's electronic. So there's no human being involved. And therefore,
Understood.
because we have all these native data integrations with property management software, with third party data vendors, so it can be computed in under a few milliseconds. And it can be computed, at acquisition, during management, at disposition, at a flick of a button. Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
Renovate, improve, so on and so forth.
Exactly. And you can still do that through a financial lens, right? But the
Sure.
score, essentially a higher score directly correlates to higher social impact through measured through the, framework. But it also directly correlates to uh, people staying longer, stability. And
Ah,
therefore,
understood.
like two portfolios with the same gross yield, one has people staying longer, therefore lower volatility, lower void costs, uh, which can be, pretty. That's a missing link, right? No one's ever linked social impact to financial impact. They sort of operate in silos,
Sure.
right? And I find like the standards are all over the map. Like some people use, all sorts of metrics to report on social impact, right? Volunteer hours, et cetera, which are hard to standardize. Like if I'm a small company, there's only so many volunteer hours I can offer, right?
Sure. Sure.
Versus a large. So I think that's kind of the focus of the score. Absolutely, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. The approach is very similar to how some of these media companies predict it. So first is neighborhood, right? Some neighborhoods like Buckhead is very different to Sandy Springs in terms of stickiness. Second is product, right? Based on your product versus your neighbors, your product will have different stickiness because of price point. The third is the resident, which is their affordability, right? Their behavior inside the property, things like work orders, messages, payment patterns, right? So there's about 25, 30 factors that go into sort of how they are engaging inside the community. And all of this, and last but not the least, is something that's very important to us is compliance. Like we make sure we do not take factors that violate fair housing, right? We care more about the the person in unit 2201 than XYZ in unit 2201, right? Um, and
Yeah.
that makes the model balanced, kind of less biased. So taking all of that together to come up with a highly accurate number. And look, we can talk about it proudly. We have two patents for it. Took us lots and lots of time and lots of modeling energy to get here. So that's sort of why that model is accurate. So it can tell you fairly accurately uh, who's going to stay. And there's an element of error there, which unfortunately we can never remove. To your point, which
Sure.
is here, like if I wanted to move next to mom or something, and I got a job in LA. I mean, I wanted to move. I mean, no machine is ever going to predict those sort of edge cases, right? That's just not possible, right?
Right.
Sure.
But
Yeah, no,
but the
absolutely, absolutely. And I think we think of the model as as a co-pilot to the property manager, because
yeah.
obviously nothing beats that on-ground experience on the site, right?
hmm
But there's two things that have happened right since that time that you checked out the patios, right? You and other operators have invested millions in digitizing the property experience, in the resident experience,
hmm
customer satisfaction surveys, digitized repairs, all the prop tech that is purchased. And each of these software, kind of companies have a footprint of data. They have all these breadcrumbs about people that are available, right?
That's right.
And you can harness it and make sense of it. So obviously some of the whether someone's put painting to the wall is hard to digitize.
Right.
but but also, like, if you think about it, for a poor property manager in a 300 unit community, it's hard to be scientific with 300 residents and walk everyone's home, right, to know who's settled and who's not.
That's right.
So yeah, and I think we are dealing with a wave of centralization, which is leading to sort of standardization, increasingly sort of few experienced people kind of taking important decisions. And what that means is a lot of the decisions will have to get automated, so that you just surface like the really important ones or the edge ones. And that's kind of the part we are looking to play.
Informed.
Exactly. Yeah, no, thanks. A
And
great question. And I must confess, I don't have, I'm still learning, right? Like, uh,
we all are.
uh, I think the benefit I have is I didn't have to interview for this job, right?
I love that. I love that answer. That's
Uh,
a good answer.
so, uh, but no, I think one is trust, right? Like you just trust people.
Mm.
I'm still learning how to hire better, but I think once you learn, you create a framework for hiring, you stick with it, and then you just empower people to become better versions of themselves, and that requires two-way trust, not just from top down, but bottom up.
Sure.
for people to feel, lack of fear or feel empowered to make important decisions. Because I think there's a lot of ambiguity in in any company, but definitely a startup, because you have to make decisions at high velocity. And unfortunately, a leader can probably make all decisions, right? But it'll be time consuming. It'll probably be inefficient over time because they will not have complete information, right?
That's
Um,
right.
I think because we're a data company, we try and embed data in many parts of our business.
Hmm.
Like we drink our own Kool-Aid in many ways. Like if you, you know, if you have data, like why wouldn't you use it, right?
Right.
Sometimes like it's a model is a model, right? Like it might be crappy, but at least it tells you why something works or something doesn't work. So and it doesn't have to be always a machine learning driven model, right? It can be a model, it can be a rules based. So I try and get people to think about like frameworks and models, and then kind of try and improve that over time. So I'd say trust, empowering my colleagues, and hiring well are sort of three ways that seem to be working.
I
So
am.
so that's a good question. I think it's yin and yang, right? Every job has its good days and bad days.
Yes. Yes.
uh,
True.
I think, I want to keep reminding myself everyone has a boss, right? It's easy to sort of, get, it's easy to feel you're top of the pyramid, and then sort of, it all goes horribly sideways when you realize you're not. uh, so I think that reality is helpful, right? But I think
Mm.
what keeps me going is successful clients. I think when you work with a customer, and in that
Mhm.
journey, like you see that light bulb go off, like the light bulb go on, which is like I figured this out,
Mm.
right? I went from being analog to being this Excel buddy to like looking at tons of BI to like believing in something. Like this is, that's what keeps me and the team going. And you like look, let's look at, we predicted these people were going to stay, and guess what, they did stay. And like, oh wow, I don't have to like do this anymore, like I don't have to like call them anymore. Like these models work. And then they're like, look, this is my bible, this is what I go by now, like my whole org runs on. So that outcome is a very powerful place for leaving an organization or a client, because it's like nothing can displace you from there. Like no one can take you back to what we call the dark ages of like being rules based. So that's what keeps me going. And then and obviously you've seen this, like when you sometimes in companies you take a bet on customers, but you also take a bet on people.
True.
And people have this remarkable way of you know outperforming and hitting the ball out of the park, right? And as a leader, when that happens, where you're like, look, this was a risky move,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
on the fence, I'm not sure, and they come in and they validate your hypotheses, they just hit the ball out of the park. That's very rewarding. That's like you truly created something, right? Which objectively may not have existed, right?
That
Uh, those
makes
are
sense.
two things. Yeah, but I have several reasons for not going on several times in the week. But they're few and far between, increasingly. No,
Certain.
thanks, Mike, and I applaud your track record. You've done some pretty cool work. So thanks. Coming from you means a lot. Yeah, no. So the Age of AI is a pretty good book. I would definitely recommend it. Eric Schmidt, has done a fantastic job. I think it's both. It puts AI into a historical context, but it's both philosophical and coming from Eric. Obviously, given all the strides Google is making,
Hmm.
is reasonably technical, and it obviously has. And of course, I have a bias. I miss Henry Kissinger. I think he was a fantastic statesman, right? He did so many cool things for his time. So that sort of kind of historical and scientific kind of combo is just kick ass, in my opinion. So what they've produced is pretty cool. I know. I agree. I agree. I think a lot of people have an imagination for AI, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Obviously, with all the kind of advances in the last 18 months, I think some of it has been proved right and some of it has been not proved right. But I do think some of the operators, there's lots of, like any wave, this is a wave. There'll be lots and lots of good and bad, right? Uh, but I think operators should have, uh, some sort of a framework for evaluating AI. They should understand that, AI is restricted by the quality of data, particularly in multifamily, where data is
Hmm.
sometimes not great, and it is, and you still give a highly capable model to a human being who may not be as capable. Then it's not always the model that's wrong. So I think they should, I would say operators need to, like, AI can't make you coffee yet, can't make you taller, right? It's there's a limit to what it can do. uh, but I would encourage them to, even if it feels risky, jump onto the bandwagon, because I would say, 9 times out of 10, it may not work. But the one time it does, it will be a home run for them. No, I hope so. Yeah, so they can come to our website, beacon.co, or they can write to me, Vidur at beacon.co, my first name, and be happy to have a chat. Always open to having a discussion. Thanks, Mike.